Hey, welcome back to the show, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Arif Halaby along with Jeff Gerard, talking about your family's finances. Of course, getting out of debt, managing money, planning for the future. What does it take for you to plan for your family's financial life? Well, it's going to be built around a few things. One of those is specifically understanding what you have or don't have when it comes to your guaranteed income, when it comes to your guaranteed source of retirement. What about pensions, right? Pensions are supposed to be there for you. That used to be a kind of a no-brainer, almost a, well, you know what, that as well as the sun is going to come up tomorrow and the Social Security will be there. Well, a lot of these preconceived notions about what you think matters and what you think exists and may not really be there for you. In fact, what a lot of people are saying these days is that pension accounts are changing significantly. We've only been preaching about this for, at least 10 or 15 years when it's come down to the way the numbers work. You got to think of it this way. When it comes to math, 1 + 1 is 2. Whether you feel like it's 3, you've heard me say this before, whether you really want it to be 8, 1 + 1 is 2. And Arif Halaby here along with Jeff Gerard. Your pension, is it safe? Is it protected? Is it guaranteed? Well, chances are your pension account, whatever they promised you, whatever you expect, it's going to be there on some level, but it will not, especially if you're under the age of 60 today. It will not be there. It cannot be there for the rest of your life, provided that you live till age 85, 90, 95 years old. It can't be there the same way that you thought it was going to be there, that they promised. Oh, yeah, but you don't understand. I'm with the government. I'm with the pension department. I understand these. Arif, I am with the Teamsters. Well, hey, I'm glad you brought that up.
Imagine that.
Teamsters, right out of October 7th, written in numerous publications. I think CNBC has it. A prominent Teamsters pension fund, one of the largest, has filed for reorganization, bankruptcy. Same thing like a bankruptcy. In other words, they go in and they say, hey, we're making some changes.
Is that like laid off versus fired?
Yeah, I wasn't fired. I was laid off.
Yeah, they're going to call me.
Yeah, any minute now.
Yeah.
Filed for reorganization under the new federal law, under a new federal law that has sent letters to more than 400,000 members and told them that their pension benefits must be cut. Okay, follow me for just a second. We've been warning about this because a lot of people think that the money that they are expected to receive because it was negotiated, because they were nice people, because they signed a deal, because they gave up a vacation day, all of those things are great, and probably the people that negotiated it and gave it to you, if you will, through the negotiation process, did so honorably. I'm not even going to question that. But statistically speaking, a lot of those people were giving away money they had no right to give away. They didn't have any math that was done that substantiated that they could do this for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that a lot of the fat cats, if you will, of the leadership of unions and organizations and management, they're fine. They're going to take their dollars. They're moving on their way. They took their buyouts, et cetera, et cetera. Any reorganization of the decades-old Central States Pension Fund is going to take months and would probably be a brutal battle as workers and retirees, union leaders and employers all seek to protect their own personal interests. It's a multi-employer plan. That means it's more than just one company. It is multiple companies. And ready for the bad news? Are you ready? It has caused problems for years, and if it doesn't come to a conclusion, in other words, if they don't say, oh yeah, you know what, this is what we're going to do, it will basically collapse, and people will start over, and the monies will be just doled out to you, so your pension or what you thought you were going to receive is not really there. And cutting retirees' pensions, believe it or not, has generally been illegal except under the most dire circumstances until this new law. Signed by your president, who's supposed to be protecting unions, passed by your Congress, who's supposed to be protecting big business, They signed that deal, and they got, I don't know, they basically bought themselves some time. So I believe that what you're seeing down the road is a couple of things happening. I'm gonna break into what I see as the issue here in just a second. But Jeff, we've been talking about this for years.
We have, and part of the problem is, as in with any other large bucket of dollars that's supposed to support a group of individuals for their lifetime, nobody knows when they're going to die. And some people are living longer than they've ever seen people live nowadays. Now we think, oh gosh, we're all living longer. That's greater. We're a healthier nation. We're eating healthier. We're living longer. We got our healthcare thing wrangled. But what does that do? That puts a lot of pressure on the dollars that are supposed to be there. Because this entire concept of pension, Social Security, whatever have you, means when it first started, 30 people put in for one person taking out, or 4 people taking out, right? And we always had that number working in favor of that concept. But now the converse is true. We're seeing less people putting in, people taking that are supposed to be managing these buckets of dollars, taking risk, losing money in the market, and more people are taking out because they're living longer. I mean, the math has been against us for a very long time. But here's the crazy part, is that this was inevitable. And in order to avoid insolvency, what has to be done? Well, some people have to be, someone has to break the bad news to someone. Because at the end of the day, they're going to run out of money if they keep paying out at the percentages they're paying out. So what do we do? Well, I guess they just have to say, when do we bite the bullet? And now is the time, because they're starting to see the brick wall coming.
$3.46. That's what they're paying out right now in pension benefits to retirees for every dollar that it received in employer contributions.
Yikes.
That's basically a 350% increase. So what you're doing is they send in $1, the new worker, the workers that are working now, 25, 35, 45-year-old worker, and the retiree that might be 65 is taking out $3.50. So that means that there has to be significant earnings. So that means that dollar has to make a lot of money. Well, it's not going to make that much. So then they dip into the principal or the bucket of dollars until slowly that amount of dollars start to shrink. So here's what will most likely happen, and you've heard me say this forever, that they're going to reduce benefits and increase taxes, or in this particular case, increase the membership dues and the dollars that are for the ones that are still working, and they're going to have to decrease the benefits. So basically, the attorneys, if you will, or of course, who never lose in this organizational structure, of any structure, say, let us tap the brakes a little bit. In order to avoid insolvency, says Thomas Nyhan. He's the one of the executive directors, one of the attorneys, if you will, involved. Gentleman trying to figure it all out, help, if you will, protect the workers by saying, we're going to reduce what we're expecting to pay you. Well, that's nice. If it works. Here's the problem. Nobody wants to take less money. Everybody wants to think that they're going to receive, or they should receive, or they better receive more money. And that's a very difficult thing to do, because the employers are not going to want to put in more money, and the employees don't want to take less pay. So who will decide this? Usually it's going to be a judge and a committee of people who will sit down and at the end come up with a plan that is going to hurt everybody a little bit or a lot.
And does that committee receive their income from that same bucket that's being
Usually they do, in
reduced?
fact.
Oh, interesting.
There's about 407,000 members of this particular union, and they're ultimately going to vote on it. There's the Treasury Department, believe it or not, is involved, because the union for years ago had some allegations of investing in organized crime. So they were forbidden of taking your union dues and investing it in particular places. So they had to make some adjustments to that. So the Treasury Department got involved. This is probably 30 years ago. And today, they're still involved. So active workers will continue to accrue benefits. For example, the pension fund could last more than 50 years or more, as long as their plan comes out, which is simple. You're going to take less money if you are a retiree who is recently retired and under the age of 70. You're going to get hit pretty significantly. So if you're 65, 68, then your number is going to be pretty significant, even if you've been retired for 15 years. If you're older than age 70, they're expecting your pensions to be infected, but not as much. You've heard us talk about this. I want to give you solutions towards towards the end of the hour, the second half of the show here today. But I do want you to pay attention to the fact that this is an enormous organization, huge money coming through there, big dollars. This is not a small bucket of dollars. Thousands and hundreds of millions of dollars are in this. And you're going to have to figure out here, where will you be retiring? How will you be retiring? What expenses are you going to take with you from your working years when you could work overtime and you had extra dollars? What expenses are you going to take through that and into retirement and be there available? So today you're retired, poof, you still have a house mortgage. Maybe it's right to keep a house mortgage. Maybe you should have it paid off before you retire. It will depend. For a lot of people, this is a pretty scary time. Both types of people and pensions, if you will, are insured by the federal government, the ones that are for smaller companies and for larger companies. But believe it or not, no more than $12,870 per year are actually protected by the Pension Guaranteed Corporation. I believe it's called the PBGC, Pension Benefit Guaranteed Corporation. Right? So that means you're going to receive something no matter what. Everybody paid premiums, they paid dues back to this, like the FDIC. The FDIC is a little more than an insurance company where all the member banks put money in. So if one bank over here fails, the bucket of dollars, if you will, an insurance company pays those people back their deposits. Well, that's similar to a Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, where every pension that is a part of it pays in premiums, puts those dollars in an account, and it guarantees, in this particular case, $12,870. But compared to around $54,000 received in a pension, that gap is huge. That's night and day. That's from poverty to a reasonable vacation every other month. So many Teamsters have earned pensions that exceed the multi-employer insurance limit, and they're going to be hit hard if this fund fails. So we'd expect them to come to some sort of agreement. Overall, there's going to be some sort of communication if there hasn't already. If you're part of this union, you know that. You're getting letters that says, hey, heads up, we're expecting this to happen. The biggest or the most latest reform was the Multi-Employer Pension Reform Act of 2014. And it set up a framework for distressed pension plans and their ability to restructure. So you heard me at the beginning of the hour talk about under this new law, that's the new law. It said, we know that pensions could either go out of business completely, or we can let them restructure themselves, renegotiate, settle down, make some changes, things like that.
And what's interesting is you're starting to see the writing on the wall. You have one of the largest pension funds in the country exercising this and now going through this restructuring. Do you think no one else is going to follow suit? Look how many underfunded pensions are out there. There's a whole boatload of them. You can find them online. And some of the largest, I mean, look at State Teachers Retirement Fund, PERS. We have a whole bunch of different funds out there. But what I thought was interesting in this article is, Arif, you're talking about having, this with this reform and this restructure, they're hoping to get another 50 years out of this pension fund with these moves they're making. But they were looking at a 10 to a 15 year wall that they're going to hit with insolvency. So picture in 10 years or 15 years, they were set to hit a brick wall and have to do something really drastic. But now a 50-year horizon is what they're looking at. That's a big difference. So do we think it's going to be a few dollars a month or a few dollars a year? No, I think they're going to have to make some major cutbacks.
Here it is.
When it comes to that payout.
Yeah. Retirees who are 80 years or older will not have their pensions cut. Those that are 75, I said 70 earlier, it's actually 75, will receive smaller cuts than younger retirees. If you have a disability pension, you can expect it to be paid in full. A group of about 48,000 workers and retirees who earn benefits by working at UPS, for example, will continue to have their pensions paid in full, and that's thanks to labor contracts between the Teamsters and the company. So UPS is part of that pension system. Currently under this recent negotiations, they're fine. But UPS was, for many, if you will, the year's largest employer and a huge contributor. Remember that there's a part to this that the reason it works isn't because of just because of the large bucket of dollars are there. It's also because of the new money Ponzi scheme that's coming in there, right? You've heard that Ponzi scheme, right? You use new investor money to pay for old investors that are expecting a return of their principal, maybe some interest. Well, a lot of these pension systems, look, a Ponzi scheme is an illegal thing, and union pensions are not that way, and government pensions are not illegal, etc. But you do have to wonder and scratch your head a little bit and say, is there some similarity that the only reason that this can exist isn't because there's enough money there that will invest in assets and in things that will create money for me so that I could retire and expect a paycheck? But instead, it's also counting on the new workers that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s, continually working, the economy growing, people working overtime, which means a greater percentage of their check is taken into this bucket. And right, it's this pyramid effect where if one of those little stones pulls out, the whole thing can come collapsing down.
It's like Jenga.
There it is.
And the crazy part is, had they done something, maybe where they check in maybe every year is too much, but every 5 years or every 10 years and start to reevaluate, what is our projected longevity in this plan? And everybody comes into these types of programs, and this is one of the major benefits. A pension is a huge benefit that someone seeks when they're looking for at a prospect employer. And if they're dangling that really attractive carrot, you have to wonder how long they're going to be able to do that. And so that's part of the problem, is that they never checked in, it seems like, and recalculated some of those payouts, and now they have to do it for everybody versus just the new people coming in.
Here's the big problem, folks. The group that seems exposed to the largest pension cuts consists of about 43,400, quote, orphans or retirees still in the pension fund, even though their former employers no longer exist. They retired, etc. So their pensions will be cut to 110% of what they would receive from that insurance plan, if you will, or at most $14,158. So if you were receiving $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year in pensions, not unheard of, normal.
Yeah.
The most you can expect now is somewhere around $14,158. That's a problem, guys. That's a huge problem. Active workers will not lose any of the benefits they've accrued up to this point, but moving forward, instead of getting 1 for 1, probably 1% or 1 year worked, they're now going to get, for every one is going to be 0.75. So they will take a 25% reduction going forward.
Sheesh.
That means if you used to make $4,000 a month, you now make $3,000. Can you not understand that this is going to change your life? It will force you to, in my opinion, need safer, guaranteed income choices away from government pension, company pensions, where you are tied to some mystical number of who knows what. It's going to force you to have to create a kind of a lookout for yourself. That's what Total Financial Solutions does. That's what we do. If you want us to help you, great. You can always go to our 800 number or come, we have we're local here in Newhall, 753-9683. That's our local number. You can also go to our office in Lancaster. We have an office in Lancaster and one in Newhall. Both of those are open and convenient to whenever it works for you. This is important because the restructuring will also abolish a rule that bars pensioners from returning to the workforce. Oh. So if you have just retired and your pension is cut significantly, you're the one that can be affected the most. They're going to allow you to still collect your pension and go back to work. So if you're a new employee, you might end up losing your job because the guy with all the experience who was forbidden to come back to work will now come back to work. And because there's only one job for two people, that person loses their job. So the new guy loses his job. And the old guy, if you will, I say that, tongue in cheek, but has the relationships, has the experience, knows the system, the companies, the processes a lot better than the person who's newer. So guess who's going to be let go? most likely it's going to be the new person. We'll come back in just a minute as we continue to talk about solutions to the pension crisis. We just brought up one, pensions that are affected across the board. We've talked about United Airlines. We've talked about numerous and countless pensions all across the board. How do you protect your family? We have that solution, that Total Financial Solutions. That's us. That's the Safer Money Hour. That's what we're all about. Protecting your assets, reducing some of the risk, maybe even eliminating fees. That's what your retirement accounts need. We're here for you. I'm Arif Halaby. That's Jeff Gerard on your place for News Talk and Information. AM 1220, KHTS. Hey, welcome back to the show, Total Financial Solutions. Hey, not everything is how it seems, right? What you think.
Truly.
You know, things can be a little bit different, including expecting to think that your pension will be there and your financial life is supposed to be what you thought. It's what you planned for. It's what you expected. And ultimately, what are some of the solutions? Now, here's a couple of options. Jeff, we've done this numerous times before where people do pension buyouts. And here's what happens. There's a chunk of money that's allocated to your name. Now, it doesn't actually sit in a separate account with your name on it and they invest it according to your rules. That's not how it works. It's called a pooled account, meaning everybody from the newest person to the oldest retiree, all of their dollars are just kind of lumped in one big pool. Think of a swimming pool. All the water is mixed together. However, if you say, I want my part, I'm going to take it out. I don't want a piece of this anymore. I don't want a monthly check. I don't want anything else. They would scoop in, get a bucket. Those dollars become yours, and you can take them and leave and do what you choose. But you're no longer entitled to a paycheck from there. A monthly check, guaranteed of anything. It's gone. Now, sometimes it makes sense to do that. Sometimes it makes sense to go through the numbers, work through the math, and come up on the other side and say, I don't want anything more to do with that pension system. I can't trust it. I don't believe in it. I don't want it. I don't like the benefits that come from there. Whatever it is. It doesn't matter what your problem is or isn't with it. However, here's the pros and cons to that. If you leave there and you put it somewhere, like a lot of people have invested that in the market, and the market drops, well, your paycheck may not be the same next month. And if it stayed with the union, well, it may not be the same now anyway, but in some cases, it may be a lot closer because the market going up and down is not a direct correlation to your paycheck going up and down. So if you put it all on the market and the market goes down, you could lose a big part of your principal, the money you put in there, and the paycheck that you're expecting to take out each month, okay? So that can happen. Another con to that is there may be fees that you have to bear the brunt of directly. If you're in an account where there's fees charged monthly, Jeff, those guys, it's gone.
Well, and that's the thing. When you have a lump sum payout from this pension and you now decide to take over as the manager, so to speak, you have the responsibility of making sure that you're navigating through whatever investments you've chosen at this point. Are they providing income for you? Well, some people say, well, no, I don't. The income is whatever I take out. Okay, great. So now you retired on, and you've heard us say this before, on an uptick, right? The market's going crazy through the roof and you retire and you're like, oh man, this is going to happen forever. That's that short-term thinking that we have, and we start to base our lives and our retirement on that type of environment. Now, not everybody does that, but now you're in a place where you think, oh, I can spend a little bit extra next year. The challenge is this: not everybody has the discipline to spend less money the next year if the market's down or if their investments are down or if that pool of dollars has a little bit of pressure on it. So you couple that with some fees in there, and I'll tell you, a lot of people anymore, Arif, they're just taking that guaranteed income stream from, and we can talk about a couple of different places they can do that, but going in and having to navigate that yourself, that's why some people just say, you know what, forget it. Just send me the monthly pension checks. I don't want to deal with this, and I'll take my chances. And that's what some people are doing. But you have a choice in a lot of cases, and with the reform of the pension systems that are going on, let me say this, the need for reform in some of the other pension systems that will not undergo it, I would give a serious look at that lump sum payout and look for some guaranteed income accounts that do exist out there.
So here's some of the benefits to it. If you have your pension account and you say, give me that lump sum check, and those dollars now might pay a monthly check to you for the rest of your life, beginning in next year or 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Yep. When it is not part of the pension system and it's now your own personal pension, in many cases you can start and stop it. So you can say, oh, this year I'm just inherited money. I don't want to take money out of my pension fund, my big bucket of dollars. I want that to grow. Next year, you might say, hey, I need to take out some money for an RV or to take a trip around the world. So give me a bigger payout, much larger payout. You can do that. So you can add and subtract, and if you pass away, your family, both your kids and your spouse, can inherit the lump sum, the big bucket of dollars. If you're in a pension and you're getting a paycheck and your spouse can get a portion of half or some of that, then when both of you pass away, whatever's left in that account that would be part of your money is gone. It's kept in the bucket, dumped back into the pool, and given to everybody else. But if you took a buyout and if you took those dollars out, that's not the case. It becomes your money. And it would pass on to your kids just like any other benefit you would have, your checking account, your savings, whatever it might be. It would go directly to your beneficiaries and not be withheld by the company. So there are options like that which can give you choices. The monthly check that you receive, though, Jeff, that is a big part of this. Sometimes on the original plan in the pension, let's just say the number, because we did one not too long ago, the number was $4,800 a month approximately.
Okay.
That means if they left the big bucket of dollars there, the gentleman was 60, in his early 60s, 62 I think, more than 30 years with the company, he would receive about $4,800 a month. Now if he took it out with us, he would receive around $4,500 and something. So let's call it about $4,500 a month. So yes, he is receiving $300 less, but his wife would continue to receive $4,500. And under the other plan, his wife would only receive a portion of, like 3/4 of that $4,800. In addition to that, if they both pass away under the pension fund, he had about $1 million in that account. It's a lot of money, but they would keep it all. He's only entitled, once he gets one check from the pension, you're entitled to only the paycheck. No longer are you entitled to a lump sum of the rest of your money. So they're going to pay you a larger money amount. That's what they do, because they're expecting some people to die young. That's what they do. But in your own private pension, when you take the money out and you put it with an account with somebody like us, or we work with large insurance companies, so you're never investing directly with Total Financial Solutions. We're the broker. We're the one that helps put the retirement accounts in place and all of that. But the key is to say those dollars now go on and can be inherited by your children or your church or a charity or an organization. That's important. Because you might say, I'm going to need more money to be taken out later on when I need medical care. Well, you can do that. With the pension account, you can't. It is what it is. It's just like a paycheck. So those are some differences there.
That's right. And here's the other thing. We're looking at basically an inflation scenario. We have seen time and again that, yes, you might have that higher payout by staying with the pension, but as Arif clearly stated, you're really only entitled to that next paycheck. There's no big bucket of dollars. We kind of say that loosely, but maybe the perceived value is $1 million because it would need to be that big if it were an actual bucket of dollars to pay you that, in that example, $4,800 a month. That's a lot of money. So if you can back that out and say, okay, well, what's this really going to do for me? This is going to provide some income for me. That's fantastic. If I pass away, my wife gets a percentage of that. Do I want to give my wife or my husband, whoever is counting on me after I pass away, do I want to give them a pay cut in retirement? I mean, that already happens with Social Security. You lose the lower of the two payments in that scenario. So putting some forethought into it, I think, is important, because whatever you do with your pension, whether you roll it out or you take that payment, it's an irrevocable decision. And like Arif said, if there's more money needed and you're making $4,800 a month from that, in this example, from that pension, that's a nice thing. But what if you have a medical expense, an emergency? What if something happens? The nice part about having it directed yourself and taking out that buyout, so to speak, or that lump sum, that's where you have a little bit of mobility and you can make some different choices. Maybe you can live on $4,000 a month. Heck, maybe you can live on $3,500 a month. And you don't need all of that. You're paying less in taxes probably. You're putting a little bit aside for savings in retirement. And you have that wonderful, wonderful lump sum that you can leave behind for your spouse to do what they want with it. Oh, not to mention, if you have any children or anybody beyond your spouse, they can get that money as well. I just see a lot more flexibility. And truth told, if somebody's much older and they were able to work well into their maybe later 60s, 70s, and you have less life expectancy, it might make sense to take that higher payment and then just make sure your spouse is there. But if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and here's what we're seeing a lot, Arif, as well. When folks leave a job and they had some pension credits at an old job, they leave that job and they can't access those dollars until they're maybe age 55 or 60. That's something else to think of as well. You may have left a pension behind at an old job, kind of like you put money into a 401k or a 403b or something like that, a retirement account. Your employer may have been building credits for you to be paid out at your retirement. You left the company early, and now you've reached that retirement age on their books. You may be entitled to go back and get that buyout as well instead of the payment.
Yeah, we have plenty of clients that are receiving $180 a month.
Yeah.
I know one, it was unique because it was a glass company in the San Fernando Valley, a glass company of all places.
Oh, wow.
And they receive about $185 a month. And I said, oh, wow. He says, oh, I know it's not very much. I go, hey, listen, everything counts. That's great. He says, but we save it up. We save it up all year long, and then we take one cruise. And
That's
that
great.
cruise reminds me of why I worked so hard for the 8 years that I worked there at the glass company, because I was new and I worked overtime, and back in the day when they had pensions at nearly every company. So I thought that was kind of unique. But here, I'm going to give you a list, kind of run down just a few of the top 10 biggest pension failures of all time. See if any of these companies sound familiar, because many of you will say, oh, but you don't understand, Arif. I work with a large company. This company's huge. They're not going to have any problems. They promised me. We negotiated. They signed. Okay, let's start with this one. Weirton Steel. Never heard of it. Maybe big in the East Coast. Weirton Steel. Well, it's not. How about TWA? Oh, you guys remember TWA Airlines? Transworld? I think I do. Pan Am. Remember that airlines? See if you see a pattern here. National Steel. That was in 2003. Another steel company. Right about the time when some of the changes in the import-export with steel and some of the import bans, if you will, and the tariffs were lifted and allowed companies to import steel from China specifically. And in doing so, of course, the United States steel manufacturers couldn't keep up because they had enormous expenses, and companies wanted to have steel at less prices than that could be made, manufactured, brought over on a boat, and delivered to the doorstep at less money that could be brought literally down the street in some cases. So, National Steel. How about this one? Delta Airlines, LTV Steel, U.S. Airways. How about that? Airlines and steel manufacturers. That's all we have so far in the top 6 that I've given you. Top 7. How about this one? Bethlehem Steel. Stays right in with our trend, isn't it? Now, these are just the largest. Billions with a B. Billions of dollars. Total of $27 billion in all of these companies. I'm going to give you the top 2. Delphi. Right? They were the manufacturer for, I believe, Ford, and maybe other companies as well. A lot of the sound systems and electronics that were put in a lot of the automobile manufacturers. That was in 2009. If you remember, in 2009, nobody was buying a car. Cars were just not being sold, and manufacturers and organizations, both in, of course, steel, right? Because a lot of American manufacturers use steel, of course. So you see that these bankruptcies occurred at some of the most depressed times in the economic cycle, and of course, that meant that the last one, United Airlines. Now, you have heard us, if you've listened to me more than twice, you've probably heard me mention United Airlines because we had a client who was a pilot who was earning $10,000 a month in his pension. Not bad, but you have to retire at 60 years old. And by definition, if these guys are still flying at 60 and these ladies are still flying at 60, they are in pretty darn good health, which means they're probably going to live a very long time. And they are forced to retire and cannot go back to work in that field where they're making pretty darn good money, where a normal executive or mid-level manager might work for another 10 years. They can't. So $10,000 a month is a lot of money, but it's not equivalent to what they used to make. However, the particular client was in his mid-60s, and he gets a note that says, hey, by the way, we're cutting your pension from $10,000 a month down to $4,000 a month, a 60% pay cut. And they said, but we're going to be voting on it, so we're going to be fair. We're going to give all of you a chance to vote if you think this is a good thing to do. But by the way, if you vote no on this, then the next option is bankruptcy, and a judge will decide whether you even get anything. So here's your two choices, right? The frying pan or the fire. You want to burn slowly or you want to burn fast? Wasn't a whole lot of choice, was it? $7 billion default. 123,000 employees were affected by that particular pension. Now, I show you these only because they're the top ones, and I want you to know some of these companies are some of the largest around. But don't think that this is not going to continue to happen. So protect yourself. Do I think CalPERS, which is the largest pension system in the world, California Public Employee Retirement System, or CalSTRS, which is the state teacher retirement system, that's another, it's either number 2 or number 3. So don't think that they're going to just disappear. Absolutely not. They're large, they're huge, they're big companies, there's billions and billions of dollars. But you could or should expect them to adjust benefits, and promise you it will not be in a good way for you. When they adjust benefits, they're not like, surprise, everybody gets a $5,000 bonus paycheck because we did so well. Here you go. Probably not going to happen. They will probably reduce benefits, and if you're still working, probably increase the amount that you're going to be putting into that. So how do you protect yourself? I want you to open up retirement accounts in your own interest. Things like the 403Bs if you work as a teacher, as an educator. Force yourself to put in. Every time you get a pay raise, put those dollars in. Build it up. Put it in safe places like a TSA, tax sheltered annuity. There's some great companies out there. You've heard us mention a few of them in the past. Give us a call. We'll help you work with them. There are some other companies I want you to avoid because there's some that I'm not too fond of, but you have to be careful out there. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is if you work for a public entity, like a city, state, county agency, you have a deferred compensation plan, also known as a 457. Wow, magical numbers. No, it's simple. And what that does is it acts very similar. You go to work, you put money in, you don't pay taxes on that until much later. So please, max out those. That means put in the maximum amount you can afford right from the word go. And if you can't put a maximum amount in right now, no problem. Put in something. Every time you receive a pay raise, put that back in there and just increase it until you're putting in the total amount that you can afford, that they will allow you to. Because what happens if a company shortchanges its own pension? Because companies do that. If there are companies and they're part of a pension system and they're suffering financially, they will shortchange their pension some and not make the payment. So the company will continue to keep them on the books for a while, but then eventually the company gets further and further and further in the hole, and they have to come to the party with something. Pretty scary. We'll be back in just a minute as we wrap up this hour of the program. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Arif Halaby and Jeff Gerard on AM 1220 KHTS. Hey, welcome back to the program. Arif Halaby along with Jeff Gerard. We're talking about your family's finances, especially if you're counting on a pension either now or in retirement. Some of the changes that are happening, some of the impacts that are being felt across the spectrum. I don't care whether you're blue collar, white collar, middle level management, it doesn't matter. You're being impacted by this whole corporate system of pensions where we as a society kind of gave up a portion of our well-being to a company. If I was to lay it out in a common sense on today's high school and college educated generation, I don't know, people from 17, 16 years old to let's say 26, and I was to say, how about this? I've got a deal for you. I'm going to lay out. You give up the next 10 years of your life, 20 years, 30 years of your life. And in exchange for that, you work with one company or in one industry, and then the company will take care of you. Just close your eyes and trust me. That group is going to say, are you crazy? I would never do that. Why would I want to give up that level of control? Why would I want to give up who I am as an individual to work one job? And if I choose to go and become an educator, even though I was an engineer before, or I choose to go back to school and become a software developer, even though last year I worked for the city, now I give up that? What? But that's what we're telling people. And so you have this group of folks that are in their 45, 55, 65 years of age waiting to retire, bought into that system as give us your life and we'll in exchange give you a pension. Just trust me. And here's what we have happening. How many of you remember Hostess Bakery, right? Twinkies, Ding Dongs, right?
Yep, sure do.
Filed bankruptcy. A whole bunch of employees were concerned. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation carved out these folks from the big pension, took Hostess under its wing. President Obama says it right here in Bloomberg, which was not a friend of, who's not an enemy of the president whatsoever, says, oh, you know what? We're going to take and we're going to protect these workers, but we're not going to protect the others. So in 2003, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, which is similar to an insurance company, just kind of think of it that way, took in $110 million in premiums from multi-employer plans. In other words, a plan that says we have many employers. A lot of employers got together, created a pension plan, so it didn't count on any one company going out of business. But that only left them with an $8.3 billion shortfall.
Jeez.
They barely collected 10% of what they needed. That means their overall deficit of what they were behind was $35 billion with a B dollars. Now just understand how incredible this is. If you charge $3,500 on your credit card and you paid $1.10, would you get a feeling that you're probably going backwards? You're probably going to have a problem. So this could happen to any organization. Food and commercial unions, Teamsters, carpenters unions, movie set people, transportation, police unions, teachers. I don't care. I want you to protect you and to protect your family. They might be there. They're going to be there strong. That's great. But who's going to watch out for you? That's what Total Financial Solutions is all about. Thanks for listening to our Safer Money Hour. Arif, Halaby, and Jeff Gerard. Follow us every week at this time as we continue to next hour of the program on your place for news, talk, and information. AM 1220, KHTS.